Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the first Decan for the month of Gemini. And I want to wish a happy birthday to all the Geminis that are out there, especially who have birthdays for this first week into Gemini. From May 22nd to the 31st, I want to send blessings and well wishes to all the Geminis who are born during this Decan of the 22nd of May to the 31st. So I'm going to jump into it. I've been away for a while, but I will go into further detail when I do a video discussing my recent trip that I took on the road to the desert, which was very special. So it's a wonderful way to end my birthday, which was last weekend. And now we move into the mutable air sign of Gemini. And so for those who followed my Decan YouTube readings, I work with specific decks. I have one deck that is my foundation to do my Decan readings, and that's a Unified Esoteric Tarot deck, excuse me, by Attila Blaga. And I'm going to just go right into it because there's quite a bit to discuss since we are in our first Decan for the month of Gemini. So Gemini runs from May 20th, 21st, depending on the year. Every 2 years or so, I believe it changes to either the 20th or 21st. And it runs into June 19th to the 20th, which leads us into our summer solstice, which is a month away. So just to give a brief background about Gemini and its personalities and its planetary rulerships. It's the mutable sign. So mutable means it's one of the characteristics. We have mutable, cardinal, and I'm drawing a blank. Cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So we just came from the fixed sign of Taurus. Now we're immutable. So mutable is versatility, adaptability, changeability, all these abilities that the mutable signs have. The mutable signs are Gemini. Gemini is our first mutable sign into our astrological season of spring. Our next mutable sign is going to be Virgo. And then from Virgo, our next mutable sign is going to be Sagittarius. And then from Sagittarius, we go into Pisces. So if you notice with those mutable signs, they all represent the four elements. So Gemini's air, Virgo's earth, Sagittarius is fire, and Pisces is water. So they all have their own characteristics. So with Gemini, this sign is ruled by the planet of Mercury. Mercury's element of influence is air. So with Mercury, it's actually neutral for its feminine, masculines. Neither masculine or feminine. It encompasses both. And Gemini is of the twins. It is of duality and of communication. And that's what Mercury and Gemini work together with. So Gemini has that wide spectrum of adapting in various situations, especially when it comes to communicating. And the forms of communication comes verbally, could be written, could social media interaction, our body gestures, how we move, if we use our hands quite a bit, or if we're just kind of stoic and we just listen. It's also part in making choices. And as I mentioned, social interaction. As a mutable sign, Gemini has a natural means of learning things, but they learn things very quickly. And they're quick to seeing different perspectives. They see it top, bottom, left, right, inside out. It's a little different from Virgo, where Virgo takes those perspectives and just really focuses on certain aspects. Here, Gemini does a general a general perspective of seeing things. It's very quick. It's like, okay, sees this, sees that, and it makes a quick decision based on what it sees right there on the surface. I think Virgo goes a little bit more specific, and it could be because of the element of influence of Virgo's Earth. So it spends a little bit more time analyzing certain situations as opposed to Gemini. It's like, okay, we have all this. They just make their decisions from what they see there. Also, multitasking. Great multitaskers. They could do quite a few things at the same time. And this continual movement of the mind allows Gemini the space it needs to work in different situations. So a good challenge mentally stimulates Gemini in that way. So that's a little bit of a basic overview, my perspective of how Gemini is. So I want to jump right into our Decan. So again, this is our first Decan, 0 to 10 degrees, May 22nd to May 31st. So there may be a little bit of residual Taurian energy, but depending on who you speak to, I feel when we go right into the sign of Gemini, like the early part, the first Decan, it represents, the aspects of what Gemini is. So with the Unified Esoteric Tarot, which I have here, our key word during this particular Decan is of curiosity. And I have mentioned in the explanation of the characteristic background of Gemini is that they have a natural means of attaining knowledge. They're curious. They like to know, what makes something work in a certain way. They want to know. They're open in that sense, and that's a very strong trait for Gemini. And it just goes to show the open-mindedness of this sign. So curiosity is good. It leaves things to be open. And with the planetary influence with this card, we have Mercury and Gemini during this first Decan. And I actually have Mercury and Gemini, so I can relate to this card. I'm always wanting to learn things and understand it, but I also like to do a little bit of everything. And I'm working on honing my practice down to be a little bit more specific. So here, Mercury is, again, the planetary ruler for Gemini, and it is the messenger of current information and knowledge, how it is received, processed, and expressed intellectually. The inquisitive side, the curious side of Gemini's mind becomes stimulated through that desire of wanting to learn and to be well informed of what's happening around them. So during this week, during this Decan week, let's be a little bit more open-minded. Let's be a little bit more expansive, and be mentally receptive to new possibilities, new ways of seeing things. That's a little bit more Sagittarian-like, but Sagittarius is the opposing sign of Gemini, so they both contrast, but they also complement each other in those kinds of actions. Gemini is Sagittarius is a fire sign, so it tends to be more in that movement sense of, looking at what's ahead, while Gemini is taking things of what's happening at that moment and moving accordingly based on the experience that they are having at that time. So, and again, that allows them to be, flexible in various situations. So that is really a good perspective to start Gemini in. How we communicate. How can we be more clear in our intent and what we want to express? Being more focused and being very quick. I'm already noticing as I'm doing this video that my mind right now is in overdrive because I have all this information here. And so I always mention each astrological month, I focus on the energy, the characteristics of that particular sign, whether I have it in my chart or not, which I do with Mercury and Gemini. So that amplifies and it brings to the forefront of things and actions that I need to be aware of. So one other thing too is our minor arcana card of influence. This is going to be the Eight of Swords. And I'm going to show you a few cards from various decks to show the differences of the Eight of Swords. Also want to show you from the Pagan Otherworlds. Okay, so this is our card here for Gemini. This is of the Lovers. So again, we were talking about communicating, and this could be spiritually as well. And also how our energies, masculine and feminine energies, communicate to each other. Those two perspectives, those two ideals, influence how we see things. Believe it or not, we have a masculine way and also a feminine way of thinking, as well as emotional. But with Gemini, we're focusing more on the thought process and the ideas and how we're expressing those out. So let's just go right into the Eight of Swords. Okay, let me see a good card to start out with. Well, here, the Eight of Swords is basically seen as, and this is again from the Pagan Otherworlds. I'm going to move this here. I made my screen a little smaller so I could see my notes here. So the Pagan Otherworlds, this is what this deck is, or this card is from. Here we have the Eight of Swords. So the Eight of Swords is seen as a mental stalemate, a conflict where things aren't moving at all. And this is whether it's self-imposed or if it was placed upon us and how we are reacting. So the Eight of Swords is, we're going to be going through the last three minor arcana cards in the Swords suit, and we're going to see this transition of energy and how we can work with this. And all these cards don't have to necessarily be struggle-oriented or conflict-oriented, even though that's what the Swords is. It's trying to understand and come to terms and how to work through things in a rational way and not letting our emotions overwhelm in the decision of the outcome. Here, the focus is on clear thoughts. And so to back up, the Eight of Swords can be read as feeling too overwhelmed in our thoughts and not being able to make a decisive motion to move ahead. That's why we see here, particularly in these cards, everything is firmly in the ground. Everything is not moving. Everything is upright. It's not like these are kind of jumbling around. So there is an awareness that there is a stagnicity in the mind. There's something that's being held back. And so here we have to delve deeper into why this is. This could be our inner fear, more than likely it is, self-doubt, which is causing us to be paralyzed and not being able to move to see what could be ahead for us. The ideas of potential risks and uncertainty needs to be overcome and to be replaced with resolutions and possibilities. So we have to see past this. This is like we're walking and we're faced with a small fence of these swords. And I say small because it is 8. We're getting towards the end of the suit, but it's also giving us the opportunity to choose to bypass these swords, to actually go through them, because there is some space. It's very restrictive, But it's giving us the possibility that if we could see what's beyond our challenges, that we can move on. The same with the Three of Swords. Any of the swords in the suits is giving us that awakening to really see what's going on and how to deal with it and how to work through it so that you can move ahead and go into the next phase. So I'm going to show you 6 cards, all 8 of Swords. And I organized this particular series of cards in the way how the 8 of Swords, and I have the 8 of Air for the Dreams of Gaia, how they represent using 8 and Swords when it comes to conflict. So here, I have here, this is from the Dreams of Gaia. I'm going to, give me one moment here. Move this in such a way so we could get a little bit more light. Okay. All right, so here is the Dreams of Gaia. This is the 8 of Air. So here with Dreams of Gaia, the 8 of Air is focused more on the ego, the consciousness of making decisions, and the awareness of the choices that you've made and being held accountable, being held responsible for the choices. If you look closely, we're seeing a balance of opposites. We're seeing where one choice can actually go against us and be painful, and the other choice is taking that risk, and throwing that sword up and forward so that we can move ahead and let go of any issues that came up from previous past actions and choices. These 3 cards I'm showing you, including this one, are the swords personified. The other cards I'm going to show you are going to be more focused on the imagery of the swords. Like we're basically looking at our thoughts, but here we're seeing the swords and we're seeing the human form and how it's reacting. We have the wings. I have another card here that has wings on it, showing that we can fly through these issues. We can move through these issues. But what's the direction that you're going to take? Again, potential risks and uncertainty, right? That needs to be overcome. This is, in a sense, with the Dreams of Gaia, choices. What are you willing to take a risk on to see what could possibly be resolved and show potential? Here I have the Dream Keeper's Tarot by Liz Houston. And very similar. We're seeing here an individual who is with fear. Okay, there's a blindfold. I love the Dream Keeper's Tarot because we have more of a surrealistic perspective of the suits, and this is such a wonderful deck that I have showcased when it comes to doing dream work, deep shadow work. I don't know why this isn't focusing. There we go. So as you see here, we have the individual, we have the wings, we have the heart that's exposed, and we have the swords coming up behind her and almost wrapping around her. But she has some space. This individual has space that's open. So this person isn't entirely held back, but because of the blindfold and not really seeing everything for what it is preventing the soul from moving forward. And we see this individual in the realm of the cosmos. You see the sky there, and we have what could be a moon right behind the head here, but we also have the opening space. We're seeing what's underneath our veil, what's covering, and we're seeing space. We're seeing that movement. And in a sense, this individual's in the water. So we're seeing emotionally the fear, the unknown holding us back. But at the same point, we have that space to move forward. And so we have to overcome those fears. We have to overcome the self-doubt that we have when it comes to moving ahead. I mean, all of this is caused by allowing the mind to take hold of one's weaknesses, some that are hidden, some that are very obvious. And then what happens is by allowing the mind to just hold us back, we're justifying that fear being the cause of no action or making these wrong choices just for the sake of not facing the truth, the truth of what's going on. Only the individual can be free of relieving oneself of seeing the truth for what it is. Here's another example, and this is from the Forest of Enchantment. I remember when I got this deck and I saw here, they've renamed the suits. So challenges is actually for air or for swords. And here we have an individual just entwined, personal entrapment here when you look at it, with thorny vines just wrapped around. This person's been cut, it's been hurt. And it seems to be a continual pattern. And so this card is a revelation of, we need to stop this. We need to stop personally being held back by our own fears. And I love the depiction. I shouldn't say I love the depiction of this card. I don't, but it's an awareness. But instead of a blindfold, the hands are used. So the hands is that connection, is that awareness. It's like, oh, wow, I can't see this, as opposed to blindfold. So I feel the hands is that conscious connection that this person is aware of what has happened and cannot go any further. There are no wings in this. We have a scarf that is very dangerously, placed around the vines as well, and could actually, do some further harm. So we need to remove the blindfold. We need to put the hands down and to put the head up to really look ahead and face our challenges. So those are the human aspects of, like, the reactions and feelings. I should say feelings because the swords are all about thoughts, but how our mind is working and through things, whether in a positive way or in a negative way. And again, here, this is all with the choice that the ego conscious self makes. You are responsible for your actions. And I feel in a sense, this is all what the Eight of Swords are. You are being held liable for those choices. This Decan in particular, I feel, pays specific attention outside of curiosity that we have here with the Unified Esoteric Tarot, but also it's facing fear. How are we handling? How are we going to work with it? And this isn't all emotional. This is facing fear, but with our mind, acknowledging it. So going back to the Pagan Otherworlds, okay? So here is more of a pip representation. The other two cards are very similar. And the term pip is more of a reference on the tool, which is the swords, the suit that's being emphasized. So if we have pentacles, we would probably see more pentacles set in a certain landscape. There won't be not necessarily a human involved, or an animal. It may be there, but the emphasis is more on the suit itself that's being represented. So we see that more in the foreground. And this is what the term pip is. So again here, excuse me one moment. So here, again, what we're seeing here specifically with the swords is like we're looking at our thoughts. These are the reminders of how we can focus more on these energies of the mind, and how things are at a standstill or there's a continuation of conflict. With these three cards, I feel they're very direct. Okay, as I mentioned with these other two cards, we have the human form. And so when we see a human in a tarot card, we emotionally have a connection, we have a reaction. When we see this, we have a reaction, but it's more on the energy that we're seeing being depicted by how the swords or how the tool is being placed. They're very direct, and I think the best way to answer this is how do we remove the self from the situation? Okay, this is from Oak, Ash, and Thorn, and it's a wonderful deck. It uses animals, uses creatures to represent the suits, but in such a way that it's not aggressive. There is one card, the Ten of Swords, is it's not graphic, but I think it's one of the most beautiful Ten of Swords I've seen, but you will see that when we get towards the end of Gemini in the way that it's depicted. But here we have the same thing. We have a crow or a raven, similar to here, okay, pictorially. We're seeing surrounded by swords, but interesting enough too, we have the open space. But being blindfolded, we're not seeing that we have this movement to move. And also, as I mentioned, and you saw in the other two cards, I had two of those three cards showing wings, that you have that possibility to fly away, to lift yourself out of the situation. The same here with this raven. It has its wings, but it's all entrapped. This almost looks like barbed wire, but there's also flowers on it. It's showing the potential of freedom and that beauty of being released. Also, we have the heart. And as I was showing here with the Dream Keeper's Tarot, the heart's exposed. The heart represents reaching out for help. You know, when people say you're wearing your heart on your sleeve, you know, you're showing your emotions, you're expressing yourself, you're reaching out, you're calling. It's being seen that you need assistance. The Tarot of the Holy Light, similar, but here the pattern that we're seeing here is the crisscross of the swords. We're seeing the continual pattern of conflict. And we even see it here that somewhere along the line, there was some personal harm. We have some blood at the end. And also we're balancing the energy of possibilities, the sun and the moon. Okay, I'm going to flip this around so you could get a different perspective. And this is Saturn and Gemini. So this is earth and air. And there's a bit of a conflict because Saturn, as we know, is relegating more towards restriction and time, which we strongly feel and see here. But Gemini needs that space. Gemini needs to move. Gemini needs to think. And what is it going to do to remove this? It's like we're almost seeing the transition. Okay, here's our possibility. But here we have to really get in touch with what's really going on. Again, being honest with ourselves. And with this being in Gemini, Saturn Gemini represented here, I feel Saturn can actually influence Gemini to really be more precise in their thoughts, being more, use the term rational in seeing things. Gemini, as I mentioned earlier, is very adaptable. It's a mutable sign. It takes in a lot of information, but here Saturn is asking to put it into a forced perspective. Take all of those ideas, all of that conflict or the conflict that you're in, and to stop the movement and really look and see what can be done to move on from this. And then from that, you can start going into the realm of the emotions. How are you really feeling in this whole process? So these different representations all relate to the same thing, okay? I'm feeling here with the swords overall, we need to choose our battles wisely and know how much we could take on, and in turn, by facing those challenges, we can grow from it. We become self-empowered. Being open-hearted. I think once you open yourself in that sense, you're relieving the fear. You're relieving the anxiety. You're taking that chance, but you're taking it from the heart. And I think that's what's really important. So when it comes to the Eight of Swords, I feel the best guidance for the Eight of Swords is it's a mindful awakening to face any challenge, whether, again, it was self-imposed or not, with acceptance, honesty, and courage. Consider your thoughts and actions beforehand and what the potential consequences could lead to. Okay. We take our thoughts, whether they're bad or good, wherever we are. And depending on the situation that we're in and where our thoughts are, if a conflict comes in, we have to face it right there and then. And it's at that point, it's the manner of how we wisely and rationally use these tools, use the sword to cut through, the thickness of anxiety and of fear, and, going into the deepest recesses of what is preventing us to face the truth. This is all about facing what's real, facing what lies ahead, and possibly knowing what lies ahead, and you don't want to go there. But again, here with the dreams of Gaia, we're in the conscious self of making these choices. All these cards are conscious oriented, but with this card for the Eight of Air, the emphasis is more on taking the responsibility, the awareness, like we've made our choices, we are aware of it. It's not something subconsciously coming about. This is a clear indicator that we have choices of making a direction that could better our situation or could further hurt us. Hence, the sword going into the hand and causing it to cut in, while the other sword's upward, ready to move away from the situation. So again, with the swords is that tool of getting to the truth, getting to the core of what's really going on. And that's something that we can take for this week, for this first decan of the 22nd to the 31st. Let's see how we can approach certain situations if we come across a challenge. How do you face it? Okay, keep in mind we're in the sun sign of Gemini, so let's use those ways of communicating to get to answers within ourselves. And the tarot encompasses all of this. It encompasses facing our own fears on different levels. Fear with the pentacles for financial, material security, facing our fears of swords, of the truth, finding the best way to communicate, be open and honest. Fire, the fear of what could possibly be the outcome of actions that we've taken. Fear of success, that's another aspect. And then water, the emotions, I think all of us at a global level are emotionally more active than we are mentally. We are reactive in that sense, and we don't make good choices that could be to our betterment. So when we get swords in a reading, especially if they come up quite a bit, that's obviously a sign to really focus on letting go of this and working more with the mind. We talk about so much, we got to connect here, which is important, but also when it comes to thoughts, we need to activate this more and activate it in a clear and in a direct manner so that we can fully express our intent, our honesty. And in turn, in doing that, we are showing, we are revealing who we are. Get right there with the heart being exposed. So dropping that fear. Curiosity again, being open to what's out there. Learn from your experiences, and apply that into your own world. So that's my reading for you for this decan, first decan of Gemini. Our second decan will take place on June 1st or 2nd, and that will be, I have to see here. Okay, it's going to be either Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm going to try and get it out on Tuesday. It's going to be the weekend of Memorial Day, so I think I should have some time to get it right on schedule. So check back on the 1st for the next decan reading for the second decan of Gemini. And I've mentioned this before, I always feel that second decan truly represents more the characteristics, the form of that sign, more so than the first or the third, because the first we're starting to build up. Okay, we're starting to get that understanding of that sign and its characteristics while it's in its first decan. The second one encompasses what it's learning at its current state in that decan. Then the third decan, it reflects, it looks back at the previous 2 decans to see what it learns from and how it can apply its knowledge into other things. So that's sort of how I break down the decans, and it seems to make sense to me when I do the readings. So that's it. You have a wonderful Gemini first decan week. Happy birthday again to all the Geminis, especially during this decan. And I will be back for the next reading in about a week and a half. And stay tuned. I have more videos coming up and some stuff to explore with you. So Feel free to subscribe, hit the reminder bell, leave comments. I'd love to get feedback from you. And I will talk to you all soon. Thank you so much for your support, everyone.